I think it's a good idea and a good advice to start working with a real estate agent plus a paralegal or someone like you to guide them with the process, because it's not easy, right?
Wow, that's crazy. It's a lot of things that a lot of people don't know about, and they end up making huge mistakes. And at time of closing, like my husband was saying, you don't want these surprises. And not only because you're being affected as the seller, but you're affecting the buyers of the property. And who knows if those buyers sold their home, and it's like, then with the 35,000 that you're saying, the more it goes on, the more money you're gonna lose. When it reaches the 35,000,
that's correct.
You
yes.
lose whatever goes over that. Yes.
And that's not including taxes, that's just the rent, right?
Hi everyone, welcome back to Financial GPS. I'm here with my co-host, my husband David, and today we're going to be talking about tenants, landlords, everything related to rents here in Ontario. So if you are interested in renting, or maybe you are interested in becoming a landlord and you don't know a thing about this episode is for you. Today we have an expert here with us that's going to walk us through the main points about being a tenant, being a landlord, the rights, all the things that go into being a landlord or a tenant. So we have Brenda here with us. Hi, Brenda. How are you?
Hi, thank you for the invite. I'm Brenda Rizzo from Rizzo Legal Services and Immigration. I specialize in the area of landlord and tenant, and also we do immigration.
Oh, nice. Good. So can you tell us a little bit more about all the services that you offer, where your office is located, how they can maybe contact you, where you work?
So I service all of Ontario in terms of landlord and tenant. So I've been serving since landlord for many years. I have specialized for the past 7 years in that area. With that being said, we offer all the services related to educating landlords in terms of their rights and obligations, and also representing them in the Landlord and Tenant Board. Okay. We are consultants by RCIC, and we specialize in all the areas of immigration, sponsorships, visas, and everything that a person needs to immigrate to Canada.
Oh, okay. So that would be like something country-wide?
That's correct. Okay. That's federal. Yes, that's correct. Yes.
And your office is?
In Barrie. However, we serve everybody within the GTA and different areas.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, nice.
Thank you, Brenda, for being here today. There's so many things going on in real estate all the time here in Ontario. And recently, I'm having a lot of issues and a lot of problems with a lot of clients. Not me, but my clients are having the problems. And there's a lot of knowledge that I would like to share with them, especially today, and especially with the knowledge that you have, because you know about all these forms, all these regulations, and all the things that people need to do when it comes to the Landlord and Tenant Board. Can you tell us what is the Landlord and Tenant Board?
So the Landlord and Tenant Board is an adjudicative tribunal that listens to all the disputes related to landlord and tenant matters. Okay. And that is the main administrative body that all these cases get resolved and decided.
Okay. Oh, that's really important. So it's not a regular court or small claim court. It's a special board that they go through all the process.
That's correct. It's an administrative tribunal.
Okay, I see. And there's a lot of things going on right now, because I have a lot of people planning to sell, and there's so many rules that they need to follow. And also what I noticed recently is that there's rules that cover the tenant, especially there's more rules that cover the tenant than the landlord, in my opinion. Something that they need to be aware is that there's a specific form that they need to fill out. In my real estate industry, we have to fill out forms all the time, contracts, but there's a specific one that Brenda showed me, and she talked to me about it, that we need to fill properly and follow which is the Ontario lease agreement. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, that's correct. So it's a standard Ontario lease agreement, and this has been established by Ontario for all tenancies. So everybody that is going to be renting a property, they must use this type of agreement. However, if you want to add some addendums and things that both parties mutually agree on in this tenancy, then yes, it can be done, but do not forget to use the standard lease agreement. That's the main document that is going to be used when this matters get in front of a tribunal. So yes, definitely that's the one to use.
Okay, and that form is really important because I noticed that some people, even when I have to help my clients finding a house, some landlords, they don't want pets. Some landlords, they're asking for 6 months deposit. They're asking for this different, and sometimes they're asking for too much information for the tenant, and that's not allowed.
Correct. So the way the tribunal works, there's also an act, the Residential Tenancies Act, and everything in the act is what your agreement should have. So if the agreement contradicts anything in the act, it will not be valid. It's void. So that's why it's so important to use a standard lease agreement, because the standard lease agreement aligns with the regulations and the act as well. So that's why, instead of you just making other agreements that contravene the act, the Ontario lease agreement is the one that everybody should be using.
Okay. Someone told me a few months ago that even if you agree with the owner that you're going to clean the snow, but that's not part of the Ontario lease agreement, so you have to do it if you're a tenant?
Okay, so the responsibility always falls in the landlord. The landlord is responsible to maintain the property. Now, if the landlord agrees with the tenant that the tenant wants to clean the snow, there should be a side agreement that has nothing to do with the property. It's more like the landlord contracts the tenant at the site to clean the snow, and the tenant gets compensated for it.
Okay.
It's not just, okay, you're just going to clean the snow because I'm telling you to. No,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you know what?
Because you live there.
Exactly, yeah. You can do this. However, I'll contract you aside from this agreement, and we can have some contract in terms of, how often you're going to do it, what's the compensation that, it's like basically it's like an employee,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
At that point.
Oh, that's really important because something by mail is not valid, I guess. Something by email, they should do a contract for that.
But there should always be written, like everything should be in writing. I always tell, my clients, make sure that everything is in writing. Emails, that's not a bad way to do it, but make sure, it's in a letter form and you send it appropriately. And if you have any questions, it's always best for them to contact them professional so we can guide them on the things that they could and could not do.
Okay.
Wow. That's crazy.
So something that I believe that people shouldn't wait to go to the landlord and tenant board court. That's how you call it? Tribunal?
The landlord and tenant board.
They should do it at the beginning. Like if you're a tenant or going to be a tenant, or if you're a landlord planning to be a landlord, you should start like getting guidance and help through professionals who know how to do the forms properly. It's better to pay a fee and to cover your assets and make sure that you don't have any issues in the future, because there are so many rules, and I'm really surprised what I'm seeing lately, especially for all my clients that they're planning to sell, that they need to follow specific steps. So I think they need to know what they're doing.
Yes, for sure. We had in the past few weeks a lot of people that want to sell, but they have tenants, and they're like surprised to know a bunch of information they didn't know. And even people who have like their homes are being managed by a property managed company, they don't know many of these things that they have to do before they sell their home. So it's very important for people to like invest a little bit of money and time before, so that they don't have to invest more at the end, right?
Yes, that's correct. And for them to know exactly what their obligations and their responsibilities are. So in terms of somebody wanting to sell their property, the landlord has rights. And those rights are that they are allowed to show the property. They are allowed to enter the property. However, they have to provide the tenant with the proper notice. So that's why it's so important for the landlord to educate themselves. And if the tenant ever interferes with the right of the landlord to show that property, then the landlord has recourses that he can take up. So the tenant allows them to fulfill their rights. So yes, there's many things that landlords should know, and that's why, we have been emphasizing through this whole chat today that they need to get educated before they decide to do something with that property.
Yes, we find this a lot. It happens a lot that we have showings. We go and there's people they're renting and they don't want to let you go through the showing. They want to, not yet. We're not ready. They don't open the door. Sometimes the house is a mess. It's filthy, and sometimes it looks like they do it on purpose, right? Because they don't want you to sell this home. And it's good that you mentioned that, because a lot of people don't know, and especially because when the showing is happening, the landlord or the owner is not there at the time. So it's hard. Sometimes dealing with these people, it's very hard.
Yeah. Sometimes we request showings within 24 hours.
Yes.
Decline. They don't
Yes.
allow us to show the house. Even sometimes when we go and do the showings, the tenant is there and he's talking garbage about the house. Like he's talking really, he's pushing us not to do anything, right? So I think people, they need to be aware that there's auctions. And I think if you're having an issue with a tenant, right, I think the owner should I think it's a good idea and a good advice to start working with a real estate agent plus a paralegal or someone like you to guide them with the process, because it's not easy, right? For the past few weeks, I've been talking to a lot of my clients, and most of my clients right now, they're planning to sell their house, and right now they have tenants. And we're finding these rules and these forms that we need to follow, these conditions and fees that we need to pay. Right. And it's important for them to know ahead of time, because, especially because there's forms that they need to follow. Can you explain to us which forms they have to follow?
Yes. So in order for a landlord to want to sell the property, they need to inform, like I always say to the clients, if you have the intention, let the tenant know. You can, send them a formal letter or talk to them and just let them know of your intention, right? That is not a proper form. However, you're just letting them know your intention so they can start preparing in advance that you do intend to sell the house. Once the property has been shown, and that's why it's so important for the tenant not to interfere with the landlord's right of showing the property for the property to go on sale. Once the property gets sold and there's a purchase agreement in place, that's when the landlord needs to serve the proper forms. And the proper forms align with the rules and of the tribunal and the act as well, the Residential Tenancies Act. So the forms allow for the termination day to give plenty of time for the tenant to vacate the property. On top of that, there's also compensation that the landlord must pay to the tenant with the form that he's giving, that he's selling the property. Now, it's very important that the landlord follows the procedure to the T. Like, he has to follow every step. Because if this goes to court and that form has not been filled appropriate, the whole case will be dismissed at the tribunal and they will have to start all over again. That's going to interfere with the sale and the closing of the property. So that's why, it's very important to look for a professional to guide them through the process, to know how to fill the forms. Because if something is not right with that form, the whole thing is not valid.
Yeah. I think it can be a nightmare if, let's say that you end up selling your house, you don't fill out the proper forms, and on closing, your tenants are still there and they don't plan to live anywhere. Mm-hmm. So it can be challenging.
Yes.
So far, I never seen one of those problems in my files, but I hear a lot of friends and colleagues that they're having those type of issues. And of course, if you prepare ahead of time, I think it's going to help everyone to make everything smooth. Something that I also learned is that there's there's some rules that you need to follow when it comes to your tenant. If you sell your house and the owner, the new buyer wants to leave the tenant there, they're allowed to stay if they want to.
Yes, that's correct. They can
Yeah.
stay there.
Yeah.
That's no problem. The same contracts remains. They don't have to do. They cannot do another contract. They cannot raise the rent. Covenant runs with the land.
Okay.
So whatever was established at the beginning of their tenancy, that remains.
Yeah.
With the new owner. Yes.
But if the new buyer wants to take possession and he wants to move in, the current owner has to pay the tenant a month, and that's something that needs to be known, because it's going to add more money on closing, right? You have to pay your tenant 1 month compensation for them to leave, and that's something that a lot of people don't know, and that's something that I noticed that people don't know about this rule.
Yes, and that's what I said when we were talking about the forms. You need to pay that compensation, because if that compensation is not paid within the time, there's a limit of when you need to pay that compensation.
Okay.
It's not just, okay, whenever. No, there are rules and regulations on the timing that compensation must be paid. And if the landlord doesn't follow that timeline, and this application goes in front of a tribunal, the whole application will be dismissed because he paid the compensation late. So that's why it's so important to know that. It's just not just, oh, I just got to pay a compensation. When do you have to pay the compensation? And for them to pay them by the deadline.
Wow.
So there's
So
all
much
these little,
information.
yes, all these little technicalities that you need to know before
Yes.
wanting to sell your property.
Wow, that's crazy. It's a lot of things that a lot of people don't know about, and they end up making huge mistakes. And at time of closing, like my husband was saying, you don't want these surprises. And not only because you're being affected as the seller, but you're affecting the buyers of the property. And who knows if those buyers sold their home, and it's like this chain, right? It just goes on. Yes, a bunch of people. Yeah, it's a bunch of people that's affected by this. So it's very important to have these things clear before you do something.
And lately, there's more people, more tenants not paying rents. They're not paying their rents. They're learning about these loopholes that they can jump, and I think it's really important for them, owners, landlords, tenants. They need to follow the rules, right, to avoid any headaches. Right now, how long is taking to have a hearing in the tribunal?
So right now, the approximate time is 4 to 6 months for a matter to be heard. And we see a lot of the non-payment of rent. So that's a big issue that we have experienced for the past couple of years when tenants are not paying the rent. And just keep in mind that the monetary jurisdiction of the board is $35,000. Anything that is passed over that, sometimes it has to be reduced in order for this matter to be brought up in front of the tribunal.
Wow, so they end up losing money.
That's correct. And that's why I always tell the landlord, if the tenant doesn't pay your rent, start right away. Don't wait 5-6 months. They don't pay the first month, give them the proper form, start the process. Because if you delay it, keep in mind, 4 to 6 months for this matter to be heard. I mean, you need to act right away.
And then with the 35,000 that you're saying, the more it goes on, the more money you're gonna lose. Once it reaches the 35,000,
That's
it.
correct,
You
yes.
lose whatever goes
Okay.
over that.
Yes.
And that's not including taxes. That's just the rent, right?
Well, yes, the rent is not taxable,
Yeah.
right? Or there's no interest, is the amount that it is. So,
Wow.
yeah, no.
That's crazy.
I know.
All right, I think that's my advice. Everyone who needs to do something like, renting, or when it comes to becoming investing and you want to become a landlord, you have to learn your rights. If you want to be a tenant, you need to know your rights. And that's why Brenda is here to help you. Also myself, my wife, we can guide you with the knowledge that we have. And I think it's really important to look for help. It's better to pay a few $100s than to lose some thousands. And people need to prepare. There's so many regulations that we have to, when it comes to renting, when it comes to buying real estate, that if people know ahead of time, they're going to avoid a lot of headaches. So I think that's something that people need to be aware of. And I really thank you, Brenda, for your time. I think
you.
myself, right? I'm a real estate expert, and I see the value of the knowledge that you have, and I really hope that people can see that also and start calling you and use your advice.
And sharing your knowledge, it's very important also because a lot of people go through these contracts and they read, and there's so many terms that people don't understand and that people just like ignore, and big words that they don't know what it means. And that's why you're there for, to explain these little details and these words that are so complicated sometimes. So thank you for being with us, and thank you everyone for watching. So if you're interested in becoming a landlord in Ontario and you don't know the little details that go into this that become the big details afterwards, please contact Brenda. She will be glad to help you before you make any mistake with your tenants. And if you're planning on selling your house and you have tenants living in your house, make sure you call her up first before you do anything. And yeah, we're here to help. Thank you so much for being with us. This has been another episode of Financial GPS. See you next time.